Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell, and welcome to Filmmaker U Live, where every week we sit down with a professional to discuss the industry and their approach to their craft. This week I'm joined by Bob Lombardi, VP of Programming at Trully Original TV, and originally an editor. Hi, Bob. Welcome to Filmmaker U Live.
Hi, Gordon. How are you?
Pretty good, thanks. So as I mentioned, you started out as a film editor. So what spurred you on to do this transition to VP of Programming?
I don't think it was something, well, I should say the jump from editor to VP of programming wasn't something I consciously did. I did want to jump from editor to producing and to being a post EP. That was something I wanted to do after working on so many movies and producing and writing so many movies. And then when I would go back to television, I was editing television. At a certain point, it just seemed it wasn't fulfilling just to continue to edit. Like I wanted to be part of the process. And, you know, because there's so many things that you in television where you edit and they weren't necessary to edit, or, you know, it wasn't as effective. And I was like, oh, if I could just be an EP, I can make it more effective, you know, to get in there. And, you know, I was just thinking I was so smart. I needed to be an EP and not an editor anymore.
So what are, you know, with COVID having come around, how has that affected you with VP of Programming?
It's been difficult. I think, you know, especially in the beginning, everybody was scared and we weren't really sure what we were, you know, getting involved in. We're based in New York City. So, you know, in March, we got hit pretty hard with it. So everything just shut down immediately. And at Trully Original, we weren't editing, you know, remotely yet. So we had to find out a way quickly how to get us online and continuing to work. We were in the middle of, I think we were finishing up Real Housewives of Atlanta. So I think, you know, we were in the middle of some of our shows and we really needed to be able to finish those shows out. And it was difficult in the beginning, but, you know, we had this great crew at True and they kind of got us all set up. And then moving forward, as COVID kind of continued to lurk over us, we just had to learn how to shoot in the field in a way that's like the safest way possible. And obviously we know a lot more now than we knew back then, but, you know, we were just changing our ways of working every time something new would come out. So like on set now we have like COVID compliance officers that are on set with us and they help us, you know, and they help the field teams just do everything as safe as possible. And we've been able to continue to shoot even though it's, you know, a little different now.
So one of the things I heard, you know, and I've heard this as a rumor and I've seen people talk about this, but maybe you can, you know, help me understand this. But I've heard from a lot of people that there's going to be, if we keep going in terms of lockdowns and what have you, there's going to be sort of a drop off of content. So because they can't shoot as much, is that something you're seeing, that there's less ability to shoot, therefore content is getting created less, or is it something that's starting to ramp back up already?
I mean, I think we're going to be in a little bit of an ocean wave for a while, right? I think in the beginning, everybody stopped filming altogether, and while we kind of reassessed what, you know, what was even going on, I think as we started to learn more, we were able to get out there and get more content in a safe way. I think now that the, you know, winter is upon us and this virus is starting to flare up again, I do think that there are certain productions that are stopping before they wanted to, or they have to reassess. So it, you know, it's going to come in waves. I think when it's safe to film, I think everyone's going to get out there and they're going to film as much as they possibly can, you know, and get as many episodes and as much as content. And then when it's not safe, you can bring all that in post and everybody can work remotely and you can work with what you have. So I think it's just going to, you know, there's going to be a little bit of a wave to it. But I think a lot of production companies are starting to figure it out, and they're making smart moves, and the networks are being great and they're working with us. So, you know, I think we're making, you know, the best choices we can.
Now I've got a question from Stanley, and he wants to know, because something like Housewives or a reality show, a lot of times you're going on locations and moving with the people. How do you, if you have a COVID compliance officer, or you're shooting on a set, it's easier to sort of protect and lock down. But in this case of movement, how do you, I guess, ensure that you maintain the safety requirements?
Well, for that, I'm not on the ground, but what we do, and we have like VPs of production that are really like involved in this, and they know like all the steps better than I can explain. But for like, say, a Housewives, for example, everyone, the crew, the cast, everyone that we're filming with, they're constantly tested. So you're talking 2 tests minimum a week, right?
Yeah.
To keep everybody safe. So then what we do is we do like, if we're shooting with the Housewives, everyone that's in that scene will have been tested. And we do a lot of outside scenes. Like you'll notice like a lot of the scene work is different than, like I think Real Housewives of Atlanta just premiered, right? And one of the opening scenes in the first act is they're having lunch in Cynthia's driveway. And it was to be, safe with, with COVID around us. So, you move forward in the best ways possible. So a lot of outside scenes, a lot of testing, and then a lot of home scenes because, the cast is in the bubble. So everybody should be safe in those spaces.
Interesting. My wife loves the Housewives series.
So, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah. Do you, and this is completely off topic, but there's a podcast called Bitch Sesh. Have you ever listened to that? They just talk about every single.
They do. I pop into a lot of them just to see what everyone has to say. There's so many podcasts about all the Housewives series and so many YouTube channels and all that. I'm not sure if I listened to that one, but I like to, kind of go in and see what everybody's saying about the shows. It's fun.
It's a group of comedians who are obsessed with it, so it gets pretty funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, what's it called again? I'm going to look it up.
Bitch Sesh.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like they try to buy all the products that they announce. So there was one where I guess one of them was promoting like a dress that had different layers to it or something like that, and one of them showed up in the dress, and so it gets pretty rowdy.
Oh my gosh.
So, what did you learn as an editor that you took into VP programming that you didn't think would be something you would carry with you?
I mean, I took a lot of things. I mean, I edited for almost 20 years, maybe not quite 20 years. But when you work with the end product, there is a lot to learn about what should have been done differently in the field or in pre-production. There's a lot of just knowledge you get by learning and doing it so much. So a lot of the stuff is just like, how is this going to work in the edit? I think I say that a lot, like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but how is this going to work in the edit? So, and obviously being patient and knowing how much time it takes to edit these shows, because, we do them quicker and quicker, but it's like knowing like, no, this is going to take a while. We need to give the editor like time to, figure everything out. But a lot of it is just storytelling, like making sure we have all the steps to get to the end story. Sometimes people think of the beginning of the storyline and the end of it, but they forget all the pieces you need in between. Mm-hmm. So I think that is helpful when we're in pre-production or when we're in the field. Like I catch a lot of those type things or things that maybe other people wouldn't focus on as much, like, oh, that's too, if we do this scene and that scene, they're both sitting down, that's going to be boring, or, kind of little weird movement type things like that.
What is like, because one of the things that's always fascinated me with reality shows is figuring out the structure, particularly in the first episode in the first season. So as a VP now, like how in pre-production, what do you bring there to make sure that they flush things out, or how do you figure out or give yourself, I guess, enough space to figure out the structure in post?
Well, every network is different and every show is different. So there's no like kind of, there's no answer that's like an overall, this is how it works. I think a lot of times it's just getting in the rooms or in the Zooms with people and talking, out creative. I think talking through creative with a bunch of people is the most helpful thing in the world, because everybody's story brains work differently, so if you're able to get in a room and everybody kind of gives you their own POV, ultimately you're going to end up with, the best scene work. So for, the beginning of a series, it's really like you think about, for series that have more than one season, you think about where did they leave off last season and where are we at now? And do we have to explain how we got here? So that's usually kind of like the first thing you think about. And then it's just like, okay, what's the most important thing for this person right now? What are they doing? And then how do we get that on camera in a way that's entertaining?
I have a question from Emerson, and she wants to know what were the challenges you weren't aware of when you became a VP that you would tell someone who was wanting to become VP?
It's a lot of, this isn't true for everybody, but in the edit, I can get into a room by myself for, 3 days and not talk to anybody and just kind of be like a mad scientist and not have to explain what I'm doing. It's just me, it's the footage. I can do whatever I want. And then I present people with a product of sorts and they can judge it. I think the thing that's different is needing to be able to articulate it before it happens. That's something for me that I found challenging because I was so used to creating it first. When I was in, just editing television, I didn't have to explain it. I would just present it. And it's the complete opposite when you're a VP. You have to articulate what you want first. And that to me was a difficult transition. Like I was like, oh, I have to use my words. That's, so that was something I had to learn.
How did you develop that skill? Because that's one of my issues having worked as an editor is, you're like, oh, I'll just do it really quickly here. I'll show you. And you show the person as opposed to, explaining it. And now I find myself in situations where I'm like, no, I have to explain this to you. So how do you develop that skill, or how did you approach developing that skill?
This is going to sound bizarre, but I really learned to listen to people, and I would literally write things down that they said that I found interesting. Like, oh, if I want to say something that means that, I can use this phrasing, and that's what, will make it clear for people and make me sound like I know what I'm doing and not just rambling. So I had this book for a while of just like ways that people would say things, and I would write it down. Even when I was talking to the networks, I would write down their phrasing and stuff so I could mimic their language. And then it was just like a lot of practicing, I guess. Like, and luckily, working at Trully Original, I'm so comfortable there, and the people there are so nice, and they don't judge or they don't, look at you side-eyed as you learn and kind of grow. So it was a good place for me to be and to be able to kind of grow into that role.
It's funny that you would say that, because having been stuck at home working in the same space as my wife, she's amazing at doing business talk, I guess you could call it,
yeah,
for lack of a better term. That I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds really professional. I should start mimicking.
You sound smart.
Yeah, exactly. But she came from her dad was a lawyer, and so every time she wrote anything or talked, she was always like, no, you got to say it like this. So
yeah,
she's been giving me pointers, but nothing.
I think it's something that, a lot of even, people that are, post showrunners and stuff like that. I think a lot of them do have a hard time articulating, because we are in such a creative field where it's really, we show people things, right? So I think a lot of people have this issue, and it is, I mean, I'm very open about it. Like, I don't remember words. I'm like, oh, what's that word? I'm trying to say something, and it's just like, I think by being aware of it, I've been able to get better at it.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy. I guess maybe the digital world has sort of accelerated that on us, because, back when we were cutting on film, it'd be like, oh yeah, pretend the sounds are there, or we don't have anything. Here's a black slug, right? Whereas now it's like, oh, I photoshopped what it's going to look like so you could see and sell the image and what have you. So it's been a weird sort of transition in the last 10 years.
It's been kind of interesting.
What is the show that you love to work on as a VP?
As a VP, I love all my babies.
This will
really,
be your Sophia's choice.
Yeah. They're all so interesting. I think I'm gonna say Shahs of Sunset, because and it's all strictly because of the editing. They're so creative with the editing on that show that I love it. I love what the cast gives us in the field, and I love what post is able to do with it when before it hits the air. It's an amazing show.
Is there anything in particular from that? Like, because you're saying something that the post and the production team do. What is it? Any examples?
Shaw's always they always talk in movie language. It's the only show I work on that they're constantly referencing movies. I'm like, guys, it's a TV show, it's a reality show. But because they have this kind of culture there where they do this fun, creative stuff, that they can take a scene like last year where one of the main cast members was running. And it was just a scene of him, running, and they started doing flashes, essentially making his like panic attacks kind of come through as he was running. And it's so fun, the way, and they just did that in the edit. That wasn't what we were thinking about when we shot, him doing his daily jogs. So it's things like that. They think of really creative ways to kind of do the storytelling there, where they kind of break barriers as far as like what's allowed. Like last year we had one of the cast members, because we had a very kind of confusing storyline, where he just came in and was like, okay, just as like a PSA, let me break it down how you need to watch this show. And he kind of went through all the drama, and it was really fun. It's a really fun, creative show.
It's so interesting that you'd say that, because one of the things that frustrates me is that people tend to just brush off reality TV because of whatever it was. But the amount of is, I would argue, probably one of the tougher things to cut and build stories with, on par with like docs in the sense, which is something that I feel like nobody's aware of outside of the industry, or even in the industry, some people aren't.
Yeah, and they should be, because I've cut documentaries, I've cut stand-up comedy, I cut just a comedy, a movie comedy, fiction, and reality television is the funnest thing to edit, because you make all the choices. You have so many choices. It's a choose your own adventure job. It's like, and really, they film so much content, and it's not like, when I was working on the comedy, it's like, okay, I have 9 takes of the same joke. You're not getting that in reality television. You're just getting what you get. Maybe they repeat some conversations, but it's never the same. It's like a different spin on it when they're telling another person what happened. So for me, if you can cut reality television, you deserve a lot more money, I think, but you can also, you can cut anything. I think you can cut anything.
Well, and that's one of the things I've seen with friends who, they start cutting commercials or something, or they start and they get pigeonholed. And I feel like, like some of the most talented editors I know have come out of reality, because they've been throwing stuff that's like, okay, how do you get this to work? And it really has to, I guess, flex that storytelling muscle.
Yeah.
Right?
And you have to entertain, and you have to be creative, and sometimes you have really rocky footage that you're just like, I think, it's a creative job. That's I think why I got a little burnt out, because I was doing it so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do it anymore. But it really, it's the most fun I had editing was with reality television.
Now, I have one last question that I like to ask everyone I interview.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say your favorite guilty pleasure film is to watch?
Film? Oh,
Or television show?
I'll say television show. It's a guilty pleasure because it's not a truly original one, but I love 90 Day Fiance from
Oh, yeah.
the jump.
Oh
I love that damn show. And they asked me to edit it back in the day. And it was when it wasn't out yet. It was a long time ago, and I couldn't do it. But the EP asked me so many times to work on that show, which I don't watch reality TV at home, because then you're working, right? You're just going to pick it apart. So when it finally came out, I was like, oh, let me watch this damn show she kept asking me to edit. And then I just got sucked in. So it's the only reality show that I continue to watch. I love it.
One of the things that I love the before the 90 days.
Like, oh yeah.
Because it's like, what are you doing? Like, what?
So many questionable choices there.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for letting us interview.
Yes, of course. It was fun. Anytime.
Thanks. Well, have a good weekend, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.